Good morning, everyone. So today we're going to be working on specifically dealing with low back pain, trying to get like normal quality of life function back into our movement, even when we are dealing with low back pain. Low back pain for this, I'm looking at potential like root nerve impingement, one side, that feeling where your body is kind of twisted up, shoulders might be shifted, hips might be rotated, and this kind of pain, it's really hard to get up off the floor. Going from sitting in a chair to standing can be really painful. What I'm going to focus on today is kind of rebuilding from the floor back up. One of the most important things when you got pain of any type, but especially low back pain, is the ability to get up and down off the floor. It's important from a mobility standpoint. Feet, knees, hips, spine, shoulders, everything needs to be highly mobile in order to get up and down off the floor, which is going to promote better function. But we also need to be able to get up and down off the floor in a way that does not exacerbate the pain or make it worse. So having strategies for getting up and down off the floor when you're in pain are just going to be important as far as quality of life. If you got small children, you need to do chores, things like that. So we're going to start, the class is going to start on our backs, laying on our backs, and we're going to go through movement slowly building up each stage to be able to stand up. Real important, since we're dealing with pain, active pain. I've had this kind of pain. I have periodic nerve impingement on my low back where my back goes out, and I feel like I want to just be on my back for about a week. But unfortunately, life doesn't allow that to happen. So this is a little bit of the strategies that I use in my practice as well as what I teach clients. So real important is going to be the rules of pain. Anytime we have active pain in the body, the rules of pain become paramount because we don't want to make the pain worse. So we have to use pain as our guide. And so we're going to follow the rules of pain. Rules of pain starts with, it's a binary. You're either in pain or you are not in pain. So if pain is present, you are automatically in a yes, just because we're dealing with low back pain. So the question is, how do we move without that pain ramping up? So pain is a yes. The next thing we want to do is put it on a scale of 1 to 10. And I'm speaking very specifically to pain related to movement. It's one thing if you're laying on your back and your back hurts. It's another thing if you are trying to move from your back to a standing position or picking up a heavy object. Does that movement increase the pain? That's specifically the type of pain that I'm talking about. So we're going to put it on a scale 1 to 10. 1 being not painful, 10 being excruciating. I want to work really hard to keep that pain level at a 3 or below, which can be very hard with this kind of pain because more than likely that pain is just already over a level 4. So we're trying to find strategies to knock that pain down as opposed to ramping it up. So any of the movements that we're doing, I want you to go slow. I want you to focus on the movements that I'm teaching in which you can do well, that don't elevate pain, that keep that pain threshold down. And if at any point I go into a movement progression that ramps up your pain, then that is your limit with that particular position that we're working. And you need to work on the movements that preceded it and not continue to advance. Just because I'm doing it in the class doesn't mean you should be, if pain is over a level 3. Super, super important. With all that, we're going to go get started. We're going to start on our back, and we're going to work first with breath. Real important with understanding low back pain is the relationship to our breathing mechanics. And more than likely, if you have any kind of twist in your spine due to nerve impingement or some kind of compensation, it is affecting your ability to expand and contract through the abdominal core, as well as up through the chest and down into the pelvic floor. So we want to work on the dynamic stabilization of just our breath to start with. So we're going to begin with our crocodile breath, working to bring expansion into our lower core. So we're going to make our 2 C shapes with our hands. The index finger is going to press into the abdominals. Side of the hand is pressing into the side body low back, and the thumb is pressing into the low back. I'm placing my hands below the rib cage and right above the pelvic bone into that nice, soft, meaty space between the ribs and the pelvis. And I want to create a little bit of a clamping squeeze with my C so that I feel those 3 points of contact. Index on the abdominals, side of the palm of the hand on the side body, and thumbs into the low back. And we're going to take some nice deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And as you inhale in through the nose, I want to intentionally expand that abdominal region outwardly like a balloon so that you feel even pressure through the index finger, side of the palm, and thumb all at the same time. Nice inhale. Feel that breath. Expand that into the hands. On the exhale, draw the navel into spine. Full exhale. Get a full expression out of that breath. And then right back into fill up and expand. Now, if you're dealing with low back pain right off the bat, you're probably going to find that the side that you have the most pain, or the side that you're kind of twisted towards, you have the most inability to press out and expand on that inhale. That's going to be, I consider that normal, especially for being in pain. However, we want to see if we can bring some neurology back into that area that's not moving as well and get it to start expanding more. So if you're feeling that maybe one side, the right side of your low back or the abdominals, is not expanding as much as the right, then put some extra focus of energy of that inhale breath into getting that side to expand more evenly. You may feel that it's the thumb that you're not able to breathe into, or your side of the palm in like a very specific region. Same thing. Imagine that breath as a spotlight to that area where it's not moving, and see if you can get it to move just a little bit more. It does not have to be perfect. Any kind of energy bringing focus into that breath is going to make some improvements in the neurology around your core. Again, nice full inhale, nice full exhale. And I will suggest doing this kind of crocodile breath, doing it frequently throughout your day. Right now we're doing it laying on our back. If you sit in front of your computer, I suggest doing it in your chair, doing it in your bed, doing it in the car, standing in line at the grocery store. Work on getting this breath to expand through that region is going to help rebuild the foundational level of your core at the level of the breath. Get a couple more nice deep breaths all the way in. And then we can let our hands kind of soften down to the floor. And the next question we're going to have is, can we pick up one leg and bring it into a figure 4 position, ankle on the knee? I want to make sure we can do this on both sides. Everything we do, I want to kind of check to make sure that I am able to do it. I'm not dealing with active low back pain, so I can move through both sides fairly evenly. You may find lifting up one foot and putting it on your ankle is very difficult. If so, try to make sure that this is not elevating levels of pain. With the ankle up on the knee, I want to continue with our nice crocodile breath. I want to maintain that breath practice as much as possible throughout this session. We're going to start with just a little bit of moving of that knee, moving the knee forward towards the wall at our feet and then the wall to our head. I'm very specifically feeling into the hip joint. I want to make sure that the sacrum, the hips, are not spinning around on the floor. Hips are fairly solid down. All that's moving is that knee forward and backwards. See if you can feel that mobilization stretch kind of in the front, deep in the front of the hip. And after 5 or 10 reps, We'll very slowly move to the other side, doing the same thing. Good thing to start to notice here is, how does one ankle feel on the knee compared to the other? Does one hip feel a little stiffer? Is it harder to move your knee forward? Does it feel like it wants to stay up closer to the shoulders? Or can you get it to ride down towards the feet more? My right side is generally stiffer than my left side because I've had 5 knee surgeries on my right knee, so I don't have quite the same hip mobility on my right side. If that's feeling good, we're okay with getting into this movement, it's not elevating pain, we're gonna switch back to the other side. Now I wanna see if we can lift our foot and pull towards our chest. I wanna be very light, so we can either grab the ankle or we can grab behind the knee to have a little bit of an assistance, and I wanna be very soft. Exhale as we pull. Inhale, we're just lightly letting the hips rock forward. Exhale, pull. You should feel some stretch in the glute of the knee that is elevated. You may also feel some stretch in the low back, especially if you have some tightness and tension related to this pain pattern. Again, 5 to 10 reps of each. Then we're going to very slowly put that foot down and switch back to the other side. Doing the same thing. Either grab an ankle, grab a knee. If you're able to do this without using hands, great. Doesn't have to be, but as you're working these movements throughout the day, you're going to find that your strength gets back, that the pain reduces, and you're able to do this with less assistance of your hands. That's kind of the positive, beneficial sign that we are looking for, that our movement practice is helping make things a little bit better. Again, continuing to breathe in nice and deep. I want to move with the breath, so I want my breath to be slow and methodical, especially if pain is present. We'll switch back over to the other side, and now we're going to look at a little bit of light rotation. Now again, how far we go is going to be dependent on your levels of pain. I'm letting the arms come out to the side with the palms up, and I'm just allowing the hips to lightly roll over as if I'm trying to place this foot flat on the floor, and then coming right back up. And I'm exploring slowly to make sure that this is not painful on the back or on the hip. Also noticing where it feels tight. And with each one, I'm only going as low with my hips as I can maintain my shoulders nice and soft on the ground. If rolling over lifts a shoulder, that means you're going a little bit too far. I want to feel into the light stretch, and I want to exhale as I rotate. Inhale as I bring it all back to center. And then switching and doing the same thing on the other side. Again, really paying attention. How far can I go without elevating levels of pain? Part of teaching the body how to move pain-free is giving it experiences of movement that are relatively pain-free, which is why the pain rules are so important. Because if we're triggering pain with our movement, then we're constantly reinforcing to our nervous system that that movement is painful. The nervous system will be prepared for pain, and it kind of keeps the pain active. It becomes a part of the neurological process of the body. Again, nice, slow breath. Exhale as you rotate. Inhale as you bring it back to center. Now we can bring our feet back down even, and we're going to do a little bit of happy baby. So we can either grab behind the knees or over the top of the knees. Again, I want to have nice assistance to make sure that we're not moving in a way that is painful on the low back. Sometimes this is like you got to bring one knee up at a time. You got to find strategies of how to get into the position that don't elevate that pain. Coming right back into Breathing in, expanding out through that crocodile breath. As you breathe in, notice that it kind of moves your hips forward. And then on the exhale, as you draw your navel into spine, the knees just naturally draw into the chest. The pelvis kind of wants to scoop. This should draw out a little bit of a stretch in the low back. Inhale, letting the knees go forward. Exhale, pulling the knees into the chest. With each exhale, I want to feel that belly button draw in to the spine. It's like you're pressing your vertebrae into the floor. And with that exhale, you can even start to lift lightly the pelvis off the floor from that abdominal core. Our hands are there to lightly assist. All I'm seeking is this light stretch in the low back. I want it to be juicy and not painful. So I'm only lifting and pulling as far as I feel comfortable. Again, as mobility improves, as that core connection improves, you'll be able to slowly drop the hands down and perform this movement just with your breath. And eventually we'll be able to start to peel the pelvis off the floor more, allowing the hips to kind of lift and roll a little higher and higher. But I don't want to get into any of that if pain is elevated. But those are going to be our positive signs that our movement is helping. We can bring our hands overhead, make sure hands and head, arms and head stay on the floor. I don't want lifting here. Seeing how much can you feel that lift of the hips, getting into that light stretch of the low back. All right, so if we're able to get that far, if we're able to get knees up, feet off the floor, I want to keep legs up, and we're going to go ahead and bring our arms out to the side with the palms up, and we're going to get into some rotation. I want to make sure that we're keeping our hips less than 90 degrees. If the knees get extended forward over the hips, it's going to lift up the spine off the floor, and it's going to put more pressure on that back. So I want to keep the knees tucked in pretty tight. It's going to kind of help keep that core a little bit more engaged. And then shoulders are out, palms are up. This is where I want to imagine that we're laying on a bed of sand and we're making a nice imprint of our entire upper back, shoulders, elbows, wrists, back of the palm. I want to maintain that spread in the sand like we're making this perfect imprint of our upper body, and I don't want that sand to smear. From here, we're just lightly going to lift one hip as we allow our hips to rotate to one side. Inhale as we come back to center. Exhale as we lift the other hip and allow that hip to rotate over. I'm going extra slow because I have to learn where is the edge of this movement that is not painful. I want to find that edge where it feels like a good juicy stretch, not pain. This is not a point in which no pain, no gain. Or pain is weakness leaving the body. We want to get rid of all those kind of pushing through the pain metaphors, and I want to connect directly with how the movement is feeling. There is an edge to pain, where right before you move into pain, there's a juicy stretch that feels good and beneficial. That's what I'm seeking. And it might be a really small range of motion that gets it. So you may not have to go very far. If you're able to go further, then we're just slowly exploring, again, not pushing into that pain. The positive feedback sign here is that you're slowly going to be able to increase your range of motion side to side. Now, things I want to pay attention to here are how much rotation do you have to the left compared to the right? And what are the sensations of stretch on one side compared to the other? Is one side tighter, more restricted? You're obviously going to have those kind of relationships. More than likely, the side that is your body's curved to, when you move your hips to the opposite side, that's going to feel a lot tighter than when you come to the same side. So we're going to go ahead and let our legs go nice and straight. We're going to bring one foot flat to the floor and then move that foot out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. And I want to have a very well established tripod foot. So what I mean by tripod foot, I want the ball of the big toe, ball of the pinky toe, and the heel evenly loaded. If my knee turns in, it's going to pick up my pinky toe. I'm rolling onto a bipod. I'm not maintaining the tripod. My knee turns out, I'm losing my big toe. So I got to keep that knee directly over the heel. We're going to start with just simple glute work. I'm driving down through the knee, pressing into that foot, feeling the hip get extended up to the ceiling. Go slow and easy. You may find that this is a little bit painful. So I want to really explore this slowly. But the big thing here is I'm pushing only through one leg. My opposite leg, completely relaxed, soft. I'm not pressing down into my opposite heel, lifting the opposite hip. That leg is like it's jello right now. I'm only pushing one hip, which is causing that hip to rise. And it's almost like it's trying to roll me over onto my belly. Although we're not adding all that extra movement. Go ahead and switch and do the same thing on the other side. Foot comes flat and then moving it out to about 45 degrees from the midline. Nice flat tripod, driving that foot down, allowing that hip to rise up. We're going to do this movement a couple times. So the first one, I just want you to explore it, not worrying about what you feel other than paying attention and not going into pain. First time through, I'm just seeking what can I do that's not painful. I'm not worried about doing the movement right versus doing it wrong. I want to know painful versus non-painful. So 5 to 10 reps on both sides. Then we're going to switch back to the other side, to our starting side. And we're going to do this same movement again. But this time, as we drive down, number one, we know where our level of pain is, so we're not pushing past that pain. As we drive, I want to see how much can I reach this hip bone up towards the ceiling without triggering pain, and am I able to get into where I feel some light stretch in the front of that hip? Inhale as we soften to the floor, exhale drawing navel in as we press that hip bone up. The positive signs that we're looking for here as you work on this movement, and again, it may not be in one session, it may not be in this class, it may take a few sessions today, or it may take a few days of doing this multiple times per day before you start to see positive signs. Positive sign is we're feeling more stretch through the front of the hip, and we're starting to feel that glute contract without getting a whole lot of pinch or discomfort pain in our low back. I want to find this nice extension of the hip, good firing of the glute. Switching to the other side. Again, inhale, exhale. Allow that breath to keep you moving slowly. I want to compare one side to the other. Things to compare that are going to be really important. Does one knee feel a little wobbly, shaky, like it's unstable compared to the other side? Does one foot feel like it doesn't ground, like it's hard to really feel that tripod nature compared to the other side? Do you have a bigger stretch through the front of the hip? And do you have trouble feeling that glute to contraction? Again, I want to feel those things balance out from doing this movement on a regular basis. We're going to switch back to the other side one more time. Now we're getting into more advanced levels of this movement based on having low back pain. So this may be beyond your level of pain. So really pay attention here. As we drive and push that hip up, opposite arm can come overhead softly on the floor. So I'm driving and extending. I want to get that glute to contract. And now I'm reaching across my body with my hand, again, almost as if I'm trying to roll over from my back to my belly. Inhale as we're bringing it all the way to back. Exhale, drive through the hip first, and then reach across slowly. I do not care how far I am pushing and reaching on this. I am exploring, making sure I am staying in that juicy, stretchy side of pain, not going into elevated levels of pain. I want to keep this below a level 3. After 5 to 10 reps, we're going to switch back to the other side. Doing the same thing, nice grounded foot, drive that hip up. If that feels good, then we're slowly exploring our reach. My first reach is always the shortest one because I want to make sure it is not painful. And I am building more non-painful repetitions to each one. And if you feel that you go into a level of pain, then just understand that that's your edge and back off just a little bit. This particular movement, when dealing with low back pain, is probably one of the best things that you can do. It is a low-level glute activation, especially the more we're able to get that hip to drive so that you feel that contraction in the glute and maintaining that contraction in the glute with that reach and rotation. In fact, I want to get to where as I reach and rotate, I'm able to even apply more pressure through my tripod foot, even though my reach is almost trying to lift that foot off the floor. I'm engaging even more. We'll get a nice ringing out of the spine action and feel. But we need to make sure we have good mobility before we get to that point. Okay. So I want to come back to bent knees and bringing feet up off the floor. And I want to stay nice and tight. Again, nice, smaller range of motion. I've got my knees tucked in right here. Now we're going to look at the ability to slowly move from supine and build up into a seated shin box position in a way that does not exacerbate pain. A lot of times with this pain, too much rotation through the back is just going to be painful. It's going to be too much. So I want to move the spine kind of as one general unit. We're going to roll over ever so slightly onto our shoulder. As I'm rolling over, I want to open up this arm to the floor and pull this elbow in and I want to be fairly active through that shoulder. I'm seeing if I can roll over on my side. I want to start by not quite going so far. So I'm just slightly rolling over to the shoulder and then rolling all the way across to the other shoulder. I'm not going all the way down to the floor. Part of what I want to assess here is, do I have good enough core control without increasing pain? Can I feel a little bit of core bracing to support my back so that I can slowly roll onto my side body? With each one, we can start to roll a little bit further until you get all the way to side, hips are on the floor, knees are on the floor. Inhale as you come to center. Exhale as you roll. On the next roll, we're going to roll all the way to that side body. Again, that elbow should be pulled in actively to the floor. And now we're going to let the knees slightly splay, making sure that that's not painful. And from here, we're going to press through the elbow, going through our elbow spiral. So again, I got that elbow nice and tucked. My palm is up. If I start to spiral my palm to down. I'm at the same time, I'm lightly pressing my elbow into the floor. Coming up to that elbow, again, I want to make sure this is not painful. Then we're going to unspiral, palm comes back up as we bring ourselves back to the floor. And we're going to come all the way across slowly to the other side. Same thing on the other side. Elbows tucked in tight, spiraling through that elbow, pressing to the elbow, palm down, and then unspiraling up. As we come to the other side, if you're finding that this is too painful, that you can't press through that one elbow, your other hand can come to the floor as a light assist. In fact, you can almost press extensively through that other hand, depending on how your body feels. So we can have some light press through the elbow with that hand. Inhale as we come back down. Exhale as we go across, up on the other side. This is a movement in which the more you work on it, especially when the low back is hurting, if you can do this without pain, I want to rep this in. I want to do lots of reps on this periodically throughout the day. All right, so now I want to start to build up. Elbow pressing all the way up to hand, all the way back to elbow. Notice the spiral. Palm is down, spiraling over the pinky, brings my elbow to the floor. Elbow pulls in, I'm able to bring my shoulder to the floor, and then slowly roll all the way through to the other side. Same thing, spiraling to the palm as I press. Spiraling palm back up, brings the elbow to the floor. Elbow comes to the side of the ribs, then shoulder to the floor as I roll back. And on the next one, as we come up, now we are in our shin box position. And hopefully you're able to get into this position on both sides. From shin box, we're going to do a little bit of hip mobility. Again, I want to keep everything low level. If we're able to get to this point, this is a pretty good deal. Especially if you're dealing with like high level low back pain, this can be a challenge. This can take a little while just to get up to this level. I want to start with a little bit of hip extension. This is the same movement we were just doing in that glute activation movement. Driving through this back knee, I'm kind of pushing into that knee, moving this hip bone forward, feeling this light stretch through the front of the hip, and then letting that hip soften. I want to exhale, drawing navel into spine as the hip goes forward. Inhale into that crocodile breath, letting the hips soften back. At this point, I want to switch to the other side. And so we have two options. We can go right back to our spiral, spiraling across, transitioning on the floor. If you're dealing with high back pain, that's probably the best strategy. Although I also want to get a little bit more hip mobility, so the other option is simply rotating through the knees. I want to make sure my hands are supported, knees windshield wiper across to the other side. If we're doing that one, I probably want to go back and forth a couple times just to make sure that this movement is not painful. If it is, then I would rather you go the way that you've already prepared your body. On the other side, getting that nice solid palm down, pivoting through that back knee to slightly move that hip forward. Exhale as you reach, feeling that stretch through the front of the thigh. With each one, you're seeing if you can move into it a little bit further without going into levels of pain. And then we're going to spiral back to the other side. I'm going to go through my floor transition. Rolling across, going extraordinarily slow, feeling that nice spiral press through the shoulder and the elbow. I want to get my shoulders involved and activated in helping me up off the floor. It's going to help take some of that stress off the low back. So you working through these ground-based movements are going to be very, very helpful as far as rebuilding neurology. All right, so now we're going to get into some forward folds. I want to focus my folds kind of more straight forward and a little bit out towards the knee. So I have a little bit of a spectrum in which I want to explore. I largely want to see how much I can feel this in my low back or my glute, specifically the glute of the leg that's in front, and a little bit into the low back. But I want to make sure that low back feels good and juicy and not painful. So you may feel that your body wants to orient towards one direction on each side. And it's probably going to be different on the right side than the left side. My body wants me to orient towards my knee because this is the direction I generally do this movement. Let both hands reach with you. Exhale as you reach. Only go as far as you can go without pain. Inhale, coming back up. Exhale, reaching forward. I don't want to force this. I also want to be exploratory. So as I do a few of these going into the angle that my body wants to go, I'm also going to deviate and see if it feels, if I can do it without pain, and kind of move a little bit in these other directions. I can even go a little bit against the grain towards that back knee, making sure it's not painful on the back. Continuing to breathe in to our crocodile breath. Exhale, drawing navel into spine. And then we're going to switch towards our other side. So again, I'm spiraling through, going through my floor-based movement as I rotate over, coming to the other side, doing the same thing. This side may be a little different. I'm actually feeling my body kind of wants to start more forward on this side. Again, keeping the movements small. And as you move, kind of changing the angles a little bit, noticing how does it feel, making sure that we're not going into elevated pain, but where does it pull on? Where do you get that juicy layer of stretch? I want to have our first round is like not going super far. We're more establishing what we can do that does not elevate pain. Then we can spiral back across to the other side. Again, I don't want to get into a rush as I move from one side to the other. I want to continue to go slowly with my breath. As we come to the other side, we've established where we can move well, where we can go that it does not elevate pain. So now we can see if we can explore a little deeper. We're still moving through the spectrum. But if you're finding like there's one juicy angle that just feels like, man, it's a little tight, it feels right on the border of pain, but without being painful, then you work a few reps into that area. Work a few reps around that area to see whether you can kind of get it to loosen up a little bit. Can it open that space up to allow you to start to reach a little bit further? Keeping it synced up with that breath. If you're able to get down fairly well, comfortably under control, take a deep breath in that space, filling up that crocodile breath, making sure it doesn't hurt. Exhale. See if it allows you to sink a little deeper. And then come back up without more pain. And then again, slowly transitioning across. I want to make sure that we are working evenly through both sides. I'm doing the same thing. Nice, slow, methodical breath. If you're finding one particular angle of that reach that feels particularly juicy, spend a couple reps on it. See if you can get down comfortably. And add some breath work into that space. Again, these movements right here, if you're feeling like that's getting some good juicy benefit, the more you work on this throughout the day is going to continue to produce some good positive benefit dividends in your movement. Going back to the starting side, again, nice and slow as we transition. I want to build as many non-painful reps from one side to the other. Now we're going to start working shin box up to knees. We're working on getting up off the ground. But low back pain, knees might feel really crunchy, hips might be really tight, low back hurts. So I want to make sure that we're moving through this in a way that feels supported and doesn't elevate pain. So I'm going to use my hands quite a bit. I'm going to assume that I don't have a lot of good knee drive or glute function at the moment. So I have to assist. Back hand is going behind my hip, front hand is going in front of the shin. I'm pushing a little bit through that back hand and I'm pulling a little bit through that front in order to get me up to the knees and kind of walking myself up. And then I want to allow myself back down. Again, connecting breath. Inhale down, exhale as you go forward. If you're able to come up to knees, the next thing we can do is see if we can walk our way up to tall on our knees. You may get lots of stretch here. I want to make sure it's not painful, but if you're feeling some juicy stretch, this is great. You can even get a little bit of mild scoop of the hips to really feel that stretch as long as it's not painful. And then finding the floor with the hands softly, slowly working back down. And we're going to work a few, 5 to 10 reps. Making sure this is not painful. And at this point, again, we can either do our windshield wipers across or work through the floor. At this point, I probably want to do a little bit of both. And we're going to do the same thing on this next side. So supported through the hands, super slow, walking it up, making sure it's not painful, walking it back down. If that doesn't hurt, then we're coming up a little higher and walking ourselves a little taller and feeling into the hips. And then moving back down. And again, I want to do, equal number of reps on this side as I did on the other side. At this point, you're already probably going to notice that one side feels easier to do than the other side. And that's really important. It's part of the reason I want to do this movement, is it's to help rebuild that balance through the hips. And then we're going to switch back to the other side and we're going to do the same thing. Continuing to use our hands as much as possible to support. But our positive sign on this, that things are improving, are when we can start actively driving through the knees and using our hands less and less. Can we come up without using the hands at all? If you're in pain right now, that's not where you're at, and I don't want to force it. But I do want to, can I go from 80% of my body weight in my hands to 50% of my body weight in my hands, and I'm pushing just a little bit more, getting a little bit more active work from the hips, both down, up and down, and slowly building up to where I can come up without using my hands at all. Again, these parts may take lots of reps. It may take hours of reps. It may take a few days of reps in order to get to where you have good function, where you're able to come up and down on both sides through your shin box. But until then, use the hands as much as you need to. There's no such thing as cheating when you got low back pain. There's function and there's not function. Coming back to the starting side, now we want to build up into a half kneeling. So again, we're walking ourselves through this using our hands. Still using the hands to get up to knees. Once I get up to knees, I want to keep hands in contact with, or at least one hand in contact, as I bring my back leg up to flat to the floor so that I can get into a half kneeling. But again, I want to keep that hand down, and I want to see if or really probably both hands down, to see how much can I control this action, this spiral action from back of the leg, bringing it up to flat to the floor so that I can get into a half kneeling position. If you feel that you can't lift your hands and you can only bring your foot flat to the floor, but your hands need to stay down, then keep them down. You're only working up to the degree in which you can do this movement without elevating levels of pain. We're slowly building up the foundation of the body. Same thing going to the other side. Using the hands, bringing up that spiral through the foot. See if you can find that flat foot place to the floor, and then spiraling right back down. And we can do 5 to 10 reps. If you're able to lift those hands up, then we can, as we move up, we can even use our hands to slowly start walking ourselves up to tall. And I'm going to bring it to the other side, and that's really what the next part of the focus is. So if you're able to get up onto half kneeling, then we're seeing, can we walk ourselves up into a full, tall half kneel? And I'm going to go all the way across, back and forth on this. To the other side. Again, these kind of ground-based movements are just really, really good for the body to groove. Especially when dealing with low back pain. And I want to make sure that we are not elevated in levels of pain. If so, then you need to be working on the lower progressions of everything we've done up to this point. Building those lower progressions up will give this next level to you. All right, so assuming now that we have the ability to get up into a half kneel in this position, next thing we want to do is I want to do some work from our half kneeling position. So I want to do some mobility work here, and then we're going to work all the rest of the way up. First thing is I want to do a little bit of work on the feet. So I got front foot forward. I want to feel as much spread through those toes as possible, like I'm really trying to spread out the knuckles of the foot as wide as possible, and lightly lifting the heel off the floor. And I just simply want to shift weight, pressing into the ball of the foot, and then shift weight back without losing any of the grounded load in the foot. So my weight shifts, my foot absorbs that, and then I press back out, but I'm not necessarily shifting off that foot. I'm still very grounded through the ball of the foot, just feeling a little load, and then pressing out of it lightly. We're going to go into another transition from this half kneeling to the other without going all the way to the floor. So bringing both hands down if comfortable, seeing if we can move that knee back, and then bringing the other foot up. In fact, this is such a nice little hip mobility drill that we're going to do a few of those before we do that other side foot mobility. Seeing how much can we bring that foot up to that hand in front, then placing the knee back down, and then other foot. After we get a few of those, coming to this other side, spreading toes, spreading the knuckle, lifting the heel, and slightly lunging forward. loading into that ball of the big toe, of the foot, and then unloading. I want that, I want to feel grounded all the way through the big toe, all the way through the ball of the pinky toe. I don't want to feel more weight or pressure on the big toe or on the outside part of the foot. I want it even across the front knuckles of that foot, that spread out foot. After going a few on that side, we're going to bring it back to the other side. Getting into the same position with that foot. Again, heel is lightly lifted off the floor. I'm grounded through that the front knuckles of the foot. And now we're doing a little bit of wag of the knee, letting the knee move in and out. My heel is just barely off the floor. Now what you'll notice is that as your knee turns in, your heel turns out. And as your knee turns out, your heel turns in. I want to maintain this spread and grounding through the knuckles of the foot. So as your knee turns in, don't let the pinky toe come off the floor. Don't let the knuckle, the ball of the pinky toe come off the floor. As the knee turns out, don't let the ball of the big toe come off the floor. So you're actively grounding through the outside of the foot as your knee is moving in. And what you're going to you should notice is that you're getting a little ringing out of the foot because the heel's turning out, turning in while you're maintaining that pressure out, and then vice versa on the other side. So it's like you're wringing it out. Then we'll bring it down across to the other side and do the same thing. Spread those toes, spread those knuckles, heels lightly off the ground, internal to external. Notice if it's more difficult on one foot to maintain that spread knuckle and to maintain that grounding throughout. When you turn your knee in, does one foot want to lose contact of that ball of the pinky toe more so than the other? Or does one foot want to lose contact of the ball of the big toe? Both of those are really, really important, and they're going to give us some indications on how your neurology is being affected by what's going on in your back and what we need to focus on, because that where you're unable to ground and connect through your feet, we want to rebuild that. That's a big, big deal. All right, coming back to the other side. I want to go this way. So coming back, now I want to have nice full tripod ground, so heels on the ground. Back toe is tucked underneath slightly so that we get a little bit of, you feel some stretch on the ball of the big toe of that back foot. And we're going to work scoops of the pelvis. Allow the pelvis to scoop forward, light stretch through the front of the thigh. Inhale, allowing the pelvis to tilt forward. I want to pay attention to make sure that this isn't painful in the back. Can we feel that stretch in the front? Inhale, filling up our abdominal breath. We're getting that crocodile breath on the inhale. Exhale, draw navel in as you scoop. The more you draw that navel in as you're scooping should give you a little bit more juicy stretch through the front of the hip. I want to make sure we're not getting any pinch or pain in the low back. And then we'll bring that across to the other side. Same thing, tuck toe, feel that big toe stretch a little bit. Scoop on the exhale. Inhale, allowing a little sway in the back, pelvis goes forward. Exhale, scoop, feel that light stretch. Notice, we'll go back and forth through this a few times, but start to notice if one big toe feels tighter and more restricted, that back big toe specifically, on one side compared to the other. That's going to be a big deal. And if you're feeling that, then we're going to want to do some more foot mobility. I'm not focusing a ton on foot mobility in this class, but we have plenty of foot mobility in some of our other videos. So now, back on the other side, doing the exact same thing, back toes tucked, loaded, exhale into our scoop. But now I'm seeing if I can reach my same side hand of the knee that's down and reach up. I want to see if I can get long from shoulder on this side to hip. I want to feel that hip kind of reaching down as my shoulder's reaching up. Exhale. Inhale, let it soften. Exhale, reach. Now, real important on this, I don't want to side bend on the opposite side. I'm getting long, hip to shoulder on one side. I'm not actively shortening the other side. I don't want this shoulder to drop down towards the other hip, which can be really hard to do. Relationally, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like this shoulder's dropping compared to this one. But it's because we're lengthening on this side, not because we're shortening on the other side. So I want to maintain my height through my rib cage and clavicle. As I reach up, I'm getting taller on one side without dropping on the other side. Inhale as I let it soften. Exhale, scoop and reach. I want that scoop to get drawn up. So we have to be very active scooping into it as we exhale to feel that first stretch, and then feel that stretch get drawn up kind of into the abdominal viscera. You may even get some stretch into the upper back. Switching across to do the same thing on the other side. Again, all my transitions incredibly slow. I want to go at a methodical pace. Inhale, fill up the belly. Exhale, drawing it in, scoop, and adding in that nice reach. Again, lift on one side without dropping on the other. This is another one that's probably good to do 2 or 3 times in a row, because you're going to get a really good indication of like, can I reach and extend as much on one side? Does it feel different? Do I get a bigger stretch? Can I go as far as it painful on one side compared to the other? This gives us a lot of information as far as what's going on that's part of this back pain, and what areas do I need to get moving again in order to get some relief in it? Because these areas in which we've lost movement, we need to get those areas back, but we have to do it in a non-painful way. All right, so now coming back, we're in the same position, continuing to get this nice scoop. Now I want to add a little bit of light rotation. Now, one common thing with low back pain is now that we're getting into an upright position, if we get a lot of rotation, there can be some vestibular stuff going on, some imbalance. The body doesn't quite know how to organize in a way that keeps us from falling. So I want to avoid pain. I also want to avoid putting myself into a position in which I might lose my balance and then I have to move quickly in a way that might hurt. So I want to keep these movements small. If you need to brace a hand on your knee, if you need a staff or a chair next to you, again, all of that is fine. There's no cheating when you're in pain. We're scooping, and then I'm lightly turning my chest like I'm turning towards the wall of the leg that's in front. Again, hand can be there to kind of assist. Exhale, coming back. Exhale, scoop, and light rotation. One of the main thing here is I want to feel, can I scoop, and can I get some turn of my shoulders? And where does that feel tight? Is it not painful? And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So as we bring it across, again, okay to brace, back toe is still tucked, nice scoop, and lightly rotating into it. Again, we're trying to get more mobility in around the spine and really mobility that does not exacerbate pain. Trying to see, can we clear some movements from the pain that we're dealing with. And not just clear the movements, but also bring neurology so that these movements have some support to them. We need stability to them. All right, now we're bringing it back to the other side, and now we get to work up into our stand. So from here, if we can, we're either bringing both hands to the thigh and bracing as we push down through our foot, a little bit through that back foot. We're also pushing down with our hands to see if we can lift up into a standing position. And can we let that back leg slide back, brace, and can we bring it back down to the floor? Now, I probably just gave the harder version of that first. Some people were not going to have the leg strength to be able to drive up. So the other option may be coming all the way down to the floor and pushing through the floor, either one hand or both hands. It can be both hands on the floor, one hand on the knee, and pushing through the floor to lift that back knee up, and then to walk that foot up, hands come to knee, and see if we can slowly brace the back to come up into standing. So everybody's different. There's going to be different ways. This is going to be one of the harder parts to navigate, is how can we get up and down? Same thing coming back down, letting the hands slide down to the knees, bringing one hand to one knee, letting that foot slide back, and then seeing if we can find the floor with the hand, other hand for balance, and then bringing the knee to the floor. That is probably the easier way if leg strength feels really compromised. Ultimately, I want to have single leg strength to be able to brace and drive up and come into to both feet, and then also to be able to go right back down. Again, part of this bracing is to support my back. I want to have good bracing through my hands, and obviously I want to be able to do this on both sides. And I would say that doing it on both sides is one of the most important parts of what we're working on. I'd say the most important thing is that we have the ability to get up and down off the floor in ways that are not painful. So I want at least one way to get up and down off the floor to start with if you're having big back pain. But once you got one way, then the most important thing is to make sure you can do it on both sides. Because if you can only do it on one side, that's not good enough long term. It's good for now because functionally you need to be able to get up and down off the floor, but long term, that is not a good strategy. We need access to the movement on both sides of the body. So on the next one, as we stand, now we're going to do some movements from a standing position. And again, now we're getting into stuff that, well, hopefully this movement is doable even with back pain. But I want to be a little bit more conscious. Once we're up on our feet, we're adding in layers of stability that the body, if the body's compromised, it just might not be ready for this. And I want to stay with the easier progression work first. So from standing, getting into a wide stance, I want both feet forward. I want to try to prevent toes from getting turned out. I want them perfectly even, parallel forward. And we're just simply going to work a little side to side. I'm allowing my hips to move to one foot, coming back up, moving to the other side. I'm feeling into the hips, I'm feeling into the glutes, and I'm feeling into the low back. If you need to use your hands for support, that's fine. If you need a staff or something to hold on to, all of that is fine. First thing is, can I go side to side without pain? If we're able to do side to side without pain, now I want to focus. As I go to one side, I want to maintain a tripod foot, and I want to feel the hips sinking down into my heels. I don't want my toes to lift, but I don't want to feel my hips moving forward so that my knee tracks forward over the toes. I want to feel like I'm sitting back into a chair. So I want to feel this. This is going to give you a little bit of a stretch into the glute. It's also going to give you a little bit more stretch into the opposite adductors. Now I want to be able to do that side to side, feeling those hips sink. Next thing, I want to pay attention to the feet. I want to maintain our tripod foot. So as I move away from my right foot, tendency is for that pinky toe to want to roll up and to go into a bipod. So just like in the foot mobility, when we were on the balls of the feet, I want to press and maintain grounding through that pinky toe, even though I'm moving away. That's going to create a little bit more stretch into that adductor space. Again, it's okay to use hands to brace. I'm less concerned about, doing the movement without hands. I want to make sure that we are supported so that we can get this ground-based activation through the feet. So positive signs that this movement, where we can take this movement as we go, as we brace, come down. Do you have good grounding through both feet? Do both feet feel fairly even? Are you noticing big stretch on one side that's not on the other side? Can we get that to balance out a little bit? Can you start to feel your glutes active as you're able to get a little bit deeper into each side? If you're able to get deeper and you got good support and no pain, then there's the next level of this progression of movement. As I go to the side and I'm well braced, I can open up my knee and my foot, lifting off the ball of the foot, turning the knee and the foot up towards the ceiling, and I can do some rotation where I'm trying to spiral all the way through that knee, and I want to feel that mobility stretch up into this hip. The deeper I'm able to get into this back hip, the more I'm going to really open up that stretch. But I don't need to be super deep. But I do want to see if I can feel here. And then can I feel the same thing on the other side? That nice spiraling up, under control. Inhale, exhale. I'm still in my crocodile breath with all of these movements. This movement is super juicy, super beneficial. I look at it kind of like it's getting the coiled springs within the deep hips to get balanced back out, to kind of charge them up so that they have their ability to absorb and release energy so that they can take some of the load so that your low back's not working so hard. So if you can start, once we can get into those spiraling actions, you're probably going to find that back feels a lot better, a lot quicker, but we can't force it. I don't want to take the body into pain. All right, so last movement that we're going to work on is our balance clock. I'm going to go ahead and grab a staff for this one, because assuming when we're in back pain, I probably want to have a little bit of extra support. Now, I might need both hands on this. I might get to where I can go one hand. I might go to where I can just use a finger. But I got the staff for support at the time being. We're seeing if we can come into a single leg stance. Spread toes, grounded foot, nice tripod. Can we lift that other leg off the floor without pain in the back? I got that the staff is in the opposite side hand from the foot that's on the ground. Can we do the same thing on the other side? You may find this is a high threshold movement. High threshold being, I can do this, but I can't do much more. This feels really hard. It's not painful, but it just feels hard. If so, rep this out. I want to do reps. I want to start building up this capacity to be able to do a single leg stance without losing my foot and without pain. Okay, once we can get to that single leg stance, now I want to get into our balance clockwork. This is partly to get the glutes to activate and to kind of remind my body that it needs to be able to support me through space. So I want to imagine we're standing on the face of a clock and we're just slowly reaching to the numbers on that clock, but I'm maintaining my tripod foot of the foot that's down. I don't want my heel lifting. I don't want my big toe rolling back and forth. I want a solid foot. So I'm only reaching as far out as I can, get back up without rolling around on that foot. Same thing, reaching back. I want to get all these angles. Notice as I reach back, I want my hips to start to open up a little bit if possible. And we want to do the same thing on the other side, right? Got our good balance and slowly exploring the clock. Keep those toes and knuckles spread on the floor. Maintain that tripod. Being slow with breath and with movement. Notice if one foot feels less stable, more wobbly, harder to control than the other foot. Once you've gotten you've done both sides and you feel that you know the range of motion that you can control, then we can come back, do it again. And a positive sign on this is that we're able to start getting deeper, bending the knee, and reaching further, especially on these back movements where I'm sliding that foot back and out. This is going to help calibrate that hip. The deeper you go, you're going to start to feel the glutes activate and the knees, muscles around the knees activate. I don't want to force this. Again, positive sign is deeper I can go without pain, and then eventually we can let go of the staff and we can control the movement without the staff with good stability, good control, and good, nice length and reach, feeling that nice quality of activation. All right, so now we're going to come all the way back to the floor. Again, under control, using the techniques that we've just established. Slowly rolling all the way down to the floor to get on our back. And we're going to come back to our starting point with our crocodile breath, making our big C's, pressing in. And we'll get a good minute or more. I'm going to do a minute, but this is a breath work I would suggest spending a little bit of time on. Inhale, expand into those 6 points of contact. Exhale, draw navel into spine. And with each exhale, allow your hands to squeeze a little tight so that on your inhale, you have something to push into with that abdominal core. In all 6 directions at once, all 6 points of contact at the same time. Notice as you're breathing, are you getting a more forceful inhale, more forceful pressure outward into those hands with each inhale compared to when we started at the beginning of the session? And again, this is a breath that you can spend a good 5 up to 10 or even 15 minutes working. Although if you're going to spend more than 5 minutes, I suggest bringing it back into some more movement flows, because I not only want to be able to breathe by myself, I also want to breathe independently. I also want to breathe coordinated with my movements. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and slowly get back up.